Welcome to History Brings Leap, your nightly refuge for journeys through time. I'm Mike, your guide on this voyage into the past. Make space in your mind, leave behind the day's worries, and settle comfortably in your favorite spot. Tonight, I'll bring you a story woven from the threads of time, designed to cradle your thoughts and accompany you toward deep rest. Prepare to glide between the pages of history, where every word will be a whisper, and every scene a canvas for your imagination. This unique experience is created especially for you, our dear subscribers and friends, who find in the past the balm for the present. At History Brings Leap, every story is a bridge to tranquility. So adjust your pillows, gently close your eyes, and allow the echo of voices from the past to guide you into the arms of Morpheus. Your historical journey begins now. Welcome to History Brings Leap. I'm Mike, and tonight we'll journey into the heart of the Andes to explore the Inca Empire, one of the most fascinating civilizations of the ancient world. The Inca Empire, or Tawantinsuyu, was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America, stretching along the Andes Mountains from modern-day Colombia to Chile. At its height in the early 16th century, it encompassed millions of people in a territory of over 2 million square kilometers. What made the Inca Empire remarkable was not just its size, but its sophisticated organization, engineering prowess, and unique cultural practices. Despite the challenging mountainous terrain, they built an extensive road system, developed advanced agricultural techniques, and created a society that thrived in harmony with their environment. The Incas had no written language as we know it, instead using a system of knotted strings called quipas to record information. Their architecture, characterized by precisely cut stones that fit together without mortar, continues to awe modern engineers. In this journey, we'll explore the daily life of ordinary Incas, their social structure, religious beliefs, and the legacy they left behind. We'll move beyond the image of warriors and emperors to understand the people who built terraced farms on steep mountainsides, who wove intricate textiles, and who looked to the stars for guidance. As we begin, imagine the thin air of the high Andes, the sight of snow-capped peaks, and the sound of wind whistling through ancient stone structures. Let the steady rhythm of our narrative guide you into the world of the Incas. In our next segment, we'll explore the Inca homeland and the natural environment that shaped their civilization. The Inca Empire was shaped by one of the most challenging and diverse environments on Earth. The Andes Mountains run like a spine down the western edge of South America, creating a landscape of extreme contrasts within short distances. Imagine standing in a coastal desert, then traveling just a few hours to find yourself in a lush cloud forest, and continuing upward to reach the freezing Puna grasslands above the tree line. This verticality defined Inca life and led to their innovative approach to agriculture and resource management. The Incas developed a system of vertical archipelagos, where communities controlled land at different elevations to access a variety of crops and resources. A single community might farm maize at lower elevations, potatoes in the mid-levels, and herd llamas and alpacas in the high Puna. The empire was organized into 4 sayas, or quarters, each radiating from the capital city of Cusco. This central location allowed the Incas to efficiently administer their vast territory through a network of roads and way stations called tambos. The Andes presented constant challenges: earthquakes, landslides, and dramatic temperature shifts between day and night. The Incas responded with ingenious solutions: terraced fields that prevented erosion and created microclimates, earthquake-resistant architecture, and clothing made from alpaca wool that provided warmth without weight. Water was both a blessing and a challenge. The Incas built extensive irrigation systems to channel mountain spring water to their fields. They revered water as sacred, building fountains and baths in their cities. This environment shaped every aspect of Inca life. From their diet to their religious beliefs, the mountains were not just geographical features, but sacred beings, or apis, that watched over the people. In our next segment, we'll explore the Inca capital of Cusco and the urban planning that defined their cities. At the heart of the Inca Empire lay Cusco, the navel of the world in the Quechua language. This city was not just the administrative capital, but the spiritual center of the empire, designed to reflect the Inca cosmos. Cusco was laid out in the shape of a puma, a sacred animal in Inca symbolism. The city was divided into 2 halves: Hanan Cusco, Upper Cusco, and Hurin Cusco, Lower Cusco. Representing the dualistic nature of Inca cosmology, the main plaza, Huacayupata, was the center of civic and religious life, surrounded by palaces and temples. The Incas built Cusco using massive stones, some weighing over 100 tons, fitted together so precisely that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. This masonry not only provided stability in an earthquake-prone region, but also showcased the power and skill of the Inca builders. The city was connected to the empire through 4 main roads, each leading to one of the sayas. These roads were more than just transportation routes. They were symbolic connections between the center and the periphery of the empire. Cusco was home to the most important religious sites, including the Coricancha, or Temple of the Sun, which was covered in gold plates and dedicated to Inti, the sun god. The city also housed the mummies of former emperors, who were treated as if they were still alive, participating in ceremonies and owning property. The Incas designed Cusco to be a microcosm of their empire. Each neighborhood represented a different region of Tawantinsuyu, with people from those areas living in Cusco to maintain connections with their homelands. Walking through Cusco today, one can still see the original Inca walls beneath Spanish colonial structures, a testament to the enduring legacy of Inca engineering. The city continues to be a sacred place for many Andean people, blending indigenous traditions with Catholicism. In our next segment, we'll explore the Inca road system that connected their vast empire. The Inca road system, known as Capacone, was one of the most impressive engineering achievements of the ancient world, spanning over 40,000 kilometers. It connected the diverse regions of the empire and allowed for rapid communication and transportation. These roads were not just dirt paths, but sophisticated constructions that varied according to the terrain. In coastal deserts, they were marked by low walls. In mountains, they were stone-paved staircases. In wetlands, they were built on causeways. The roads ranged from narrow paths to highways 20 meters wide. Along the roads, the Incas built tambos or way stations, located about a day's walk apart. These provided lodging, food, and supplies for travelers, especially the chasqui, who were the empire's messengers. The chasqui could run up to 240 kilometers a day, relaying messages and goods across the empire. The roads also featured suspension bridges made of woven grass fibers, some spanning deep gorges. These bridges were strong enough to hold people and animals, but were replaced annually as part of community service. The road system served multiple purposes: military, administrative, commercial, and religious. It allowed the Inca army to move quickly to quell rebellions, officials to collect taxes and goods to be redistributed across the empire. Travel on these roads was restricted. Common people needed permission to use them, and they were primarily for state business. This control allowed the Incas to maintain tight administration over their vast territory. Today, parts of the Capacone are still in use by Andean communities, and in 2014, it was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognizing its cultural and historical significance. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca agriculture and how they fed their empire. The Incas were master farmers who transformed steep mountain slopes into productive agricultural land through terracing. These terraces not only prevented erosion, but also created microclimates that allowed for the cultivation of a variety of crops. Imagine the Andes, covered in stepped terraces, each level carefully designed with retaining walls, drainage systems, and soil brought from lower elevations. The Incas experimented with different crops at various altitudes, creating a diverse agricultural system that could feed millions. They grew over 200 varieties of potatoes, as well as maize, quinoa, beans, and other crops. To preserve food for times of scarcity, they developed techniques like freeze-drying potatoes to create chuno, which could be stored for years. The Incas also built sophisticated irrigation systems, channeling water from mountain springs to their fields through canals and reservoirs. They understood the importance of water management in an environment where rainfall was unpredictable. Agriculture was not just about feeding people, it was central to Inca religion and society. They held ceremonies to ensure good harvests and viewed farming as a sacred act. The state controlled agricultural production, storing surplus in warehouses called kolkas to redistribute during famines. The Incas also experimented with crop breeding, developing varieties that could withstand the harsh Andean conditions. Their agricultural knowledge is passed down through generations and continues to influence farming practices in the Andes today. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca society and the Ilu system. At the foundation of Inca society was the Ilu, a group of families who shared a common ancestor and worked together as a community. The Ilu was the basic social and economic unit of the empire, responsible for farming, herding, and supporting its members. Each Ilu controlled a specific territory and had rights to certain lands and resources. Members worked collectively to farm communal fields and support those in need, such as the elderly, sick, or orphaned. This system of reciprocal labor, known as Ani, ensured that everyone contributed according to their ability and received according to their need. The Ilu was also responsible for providing labor to the state through the meta system, where members took turns working on state projects like road construction, temple building, or military service. This labor tax was a fundamental aspect of Inca administration. Ilus were organized hierarchically, with several Ilus forming a larger group led by a Corica, or local chief. These chiefs reported to higher authorities, ultimately answering to the Sapa Inca, the emperor. This structure allowed the Inca state to maintain control over a vast and diverse territory. Within the Ilu, roles were often determined by age and gender. Elders held positions of respect and authority, while men typically handled farming, herding, and construction, and women managed the household, textile production, and childcare. The Ilu system was remarkably resilient and adaptable, allowing the Incas to incorporate conquered peoples into their empire by assigning them to existing Ilus or creating new ones. This flexibility was key to the empire's stability and growth. The concept of community and mutual support embodied by the Ilu continues to influence Andean societies today, where collective work and reciprocal exchange remain important cultural values. In our next segment, we'll explore the social hierarchy of the Inca Empire. Inca society was highly stratified, with a clear hierarchy that determined one's role, privileges, and responsibilities. At the top was the Sapa Inca, considered the divine son of the sun god Inti, with absolute political and religious authority. Below the Sapa Inca was the royal family and nobility, who held positions of power in the government, military, and priesthood. This elite class enjoyed privileges such as fine clothing, multiple wives, and exemption from manual labor. The next tier consisted of administrators, caracas, local chiefs, and skilled artisans who served the state. These individuals were often granted land and laborers in exchange for their services and loyalty to the empire. The majority of the population were common farmers and herders organized into Alis. While they had fewer privileges, they were guaranteed basic subsistence through the state's redistribution system and were protected from extreme poverty. At the bottom of the social hierarchy were the Yanaconas, who were servants to the nobility or state, and prisoners of war or criminals who were assigned to forced labor. These groups had the least freedom and social mobility. Social status was largely hereditary, but individuals could rise through exceptional service to the empire, particularly in military or administrative roles. The Incas also practiced a form of social engineering, relocating entire communities to different parts of the empire to break up rebellious groups and spread Inca culture. Despite this rigid hierarchy, Inca society emphasized collective welfare over individual advancement. The state provided for basic needs through the redistribution of goods and services, and communal labor ensured that even the most ambitious projects could be completed. This social structure allowed the Incas to mobilize vast resources and labor for monumental projects, while maintaining stability across their diverse empire. It reflected their values of order, hierarchy, and collective responsibility. In our next segment, we'll explore the role of women in Inca society. Women played vital and multifaceted roles in Inca society, contributing significantly to the empire's economic, social, and religious life. While Inca culture was patriarchal, women held respected positions and enjoyed certain rights and privileges not always available to women in other contemporary civilizations. In the domestic sphere, women managed the household, raised children, and were responsible for food preparation and textile production. Weaving was particularly important as textiles were used as currency, tribute, and gifts. Women spent hours each day spinning and weaving, creating intricate patterns that conveyed social status and cultural identity. Women also participated in agricultural work, planting and harvesting crops alongside men. They were responsible for caring for small animals like guinea pigs, which were an important source of protein. In the religious realm, some women served as priestesses in temples, particularly those dedicated to the moon goddess Mamaquilla. The most revered were the Virgins of the Sun, chosen as children to serve in the Temple of the Sun in Cusco. These women performed rituals, prepared ceremonial foods, and woven fine textiles for the empire. The Inca state maintained special houses for chosen women, known as aclawasis, where girls selected for their beauty or ancestry were trained in weaving, cooking, and religious rituals. Some became wives of nobles or the Sapa Inca, while others remained celibate servants of the state. Women could own property and inherit goods from their families. They also had the right to divorce in cases of abuse or infertility, though they needed approval from community authorities. Despite these rights, women's lives were largely controlled by male relatives. Marriages were arranged, and women were expected to be obedient to their husbands and fathers. The ideal Inca woman was hardworking, chaste, and devoted to her family. The contributions of women were essential to the functioning of Inca society, from producing food and textiles to maintaining religious traditions. Their labor and skills supported the empire's economy and cultural life. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca religion and spiritual beliefs. Religion permeated every aspect of Inca life, shaping their understanding of the world and their place within it. The Incas practiced a form of animism, believing that spirits inhabited natural features like mountains, rivers, and rocks. At the center of Inca religion was Inti, the sun god, considered the divine ancestor of the Sapa Inca and the provider of light and warmth. The Coricancha in Cusco, the Temple of the Sun, was the most important religious site, covered in gold and filled with treasures. Other major deities included Illapa, the god of thunder and rain, Pachamama, the earth goddess associated with fertility, and Mamaquilla, the moon goddess and protector of women. The Incas also revered their ancestors, whose mummies were treated as if still alive. Participating in ceremonies and owning property, religious practices were closely tied to the agricultural calendar. The Incas held elaborate ceremonies to mark important events like the solstices, planting and harvesting seasons, and the birth of animals. These rituals involved music, dance, offerings of food and drink, and sometimes animal sacrifices. The Incas believed in maintaining balance between the human and spirit worlds through reciprocal relationships. They made offerings to mountain spirits Apis and earth deities in exchange for protection and prosperity. Shamans, known as Pacos, acted as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds, performing healing rituals and divination. Religious sites were often located at significant natural features, such as mountain peaks, springs, or unusual rock formations. The Incas built shrines and temples at these locations, sometimes modifying the landscape to enhance its sacred qualities. The Spanish conquest dramatically altered Inca religious practices, as Catholicism was imposed and indigenous beliefs were suppressed. However, many Andean people continued to practice their traditional faith in secret, blending Christian and indigenous elements into a unique, syncretic tradition that persists today. In our next segment, we'll explore sacred sites and religious practices in more detail. The Inca landscape was dotted with sacred sites known as huacas, which could be natural features like mountains, springs, or unusual rock formations, or human-made structures like temples and shrines. These sites were considered points of connection between the human and spirit worlds. One of the most impressive sacred sites is Machu Picchu, perched high in the Andes. While its exact purpose remains debated, it likely served as a royal estate and religious center. Its precise stonework and astronomical alignments reflect the Incas' advanced understanding of engineering and cosmology. Another important site is the Island of the Sun in Lake Titicaca, believed to be the birthplace of the sun god Inti and the first Inca, Manco Capac. Pilgrims traveled from across the empire to make offerings at this sacred location. Religious rituals were elaborate affairs involving music, dance, and offerings. The most important ceremony was Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, celebrated at the winter solstice. This 9-day festival included processions, sacrifices, and feasting, with the Sapa Inca playing a central role. The Incas practiced various forms of divination to understand the will of the gods and predict the future. They might examine the patterns made by spilled liquid, the entrails of sacrificed animals, or the movement of spiders. Human sacrifice, while rare, did occur in times of crisis such as famine, disease, or the death of an emperor. Children were sometimes sacrificed as offerings to mountain gods. It's believed to become messengers between the human and divine realms. The Incas also practiced mummification, preserving the bodies of deceased rulers and treating them as if still alive. These mummies participated in ceremonies, owned property, and were consulted on important matters, blurring the line between life and death. Sacred sites and rituals were essential to maintaining cosmic order and ensuring the prosperity of the empire. They reflected the Incas' deep connection to the natural world and their belief in the interdependence of all things. In our next segment, we'll explore the Inti Raymi festival in more detail. Inti Raymi, the Festival of the Sun, was the most important religious celebration in the Inca calendar. Held during the winter solstice in June, it marked the beginning of the new year and the return of the sun after the darkest days. The festival lasted 9 days and involved elaborate ceremonies, processions, and feasting. The Sapa Inca, as the divine representative of Inti on Earth, played the central role, leading rituals and making offerings to ensure the sun's return and the fertility of the land. Preparations for Inti Raymi began weeks in advance. People fasted and abstained from sexual relations to purify themselves. The city of Cusco was decorated with flowers and colorful textiles, and participants wore their finest clothing. The main ceremony took place in the plaza of Huacallapata in Cusco. The Sapa Inca, accompanied by nobles and priests, would drink chicha maize beer and make offerings to Inti, including gold and silver objects, fine textiles, and sometimes llamas. The highlight of the festival was the simulated sacrifice of a black llama, whose entrails were examined by priests to predict the coming year. While the llama was not actually killed, the ritual symbolized the renewal of life and the reciprocity between humans and the divine. Following the religious ceremonies, days of feasting, drinking, and celebration ensued. People from across the empire gathered in Cusco, exchanging goods, performing music and dance, and strengthening social bonds. Inti Raymi served multiple purposes: religious, agricultural, social, and political. It reinforced the divine authority of the Sapa Inca, ensured agricultural fertility, brought people together from across the empire, and demonstrated the wealth and power of the Inca state. Today, Inti Raymi is still celebrated in Cusco and other Andean communities, blending traditional elements with Catholic influences. The modern festival attracts thousands of visitors and serves as a powerful expression of cultural identity and resilience. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca textiles and their cultural significance. Textiles were among the most valued and sophisticated art forms in Inca society, serving practical, social, and religious functions. The Incas considered weaving a sacred gift from the gods, and textiles were more precious than gold or silver. Inca textiles were produced using backstrap looms, where the weaver's body tensioned the warp threads. This simple yet versatile technology allowed for the creation of complex patterns and designs. Women were the primary weavers, spending hours each day spinning and weaving. The finest textiles were made from vicuna wool, the softest and most luxurious fiber, reserved for royalty and religious use. Alpaca and llama wool were more commonly used for everyday clothing, while cotton was grown in coastal regions for lighter garments. Textiles conveyed important social information through their quality, design, and color. Only the nobility could wear kumbi, the finest cloth made from vicuna wool with intricate patterns. Commoners wore coarser textiles with simpler designs. Patterns and motifs carried symbolic meanings, representing elements of the natural world, abstract concepts, or social status. Geometric designs like tokapu, small squares containing various symbols, were particularly significant and may have served as a form of writing or record-keeping. The state controlled textile production through the Acloasis, where chosen women created fine cloth for the empire. These textiles were used as gifts to loyal subjects, rewards for service, or trade goods. They also served as tax payments and offerings to the gods. Textiles played important roles in religious ceremonies. Priests wore special garments for rituals, and textiles were used to wrap mummies and sacred objects. The finest cloths were burned as offerings to the gods. The Spanish conquest disrupted traditional textile production as European looms and fibers were introduced. However, Andean weavers continued to preserve traditional techniques and designs, passing them down through generations. Today, Inca textiles are recognized as masterpieces of world heritage. Admired for their technical sophistication and artistic beauty, they remain an important expression of cultural identity and continuity in the Andes. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca metalworking and craftsmanship. While the Incas are often celebrated for their stone architecture and textiles, their metalworking skills were equally impressive. They mastered the working of gold, silver, copper, and bronze, creating objects of both practical and ritual significance. The Incas did not have iron or steel, but they developed sophisticated techniques for working other metals. They used gold, which they considered the sweat of the sun god Inti, primarily for religious and ceremonial objects. Silver, associated with the moon goddess Mamaquilla, was also highly valued. Inca metalworkers employed various techniques, including hammering, casting, and alloying. They created intricate jewelry, ceremonial knives, figurines, and vessels. One of their most remarkable achievements was the ability to join metal pieces without soldering, using a technique called diffusion bonding. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, was particularly important for practical applications. The Incas used bronze to make tools, weapons, and agricultural implements. Bronze axes and chisels were essential for building their stone structures and carving wooden objects. The Incas also developed techniques for plating objects with precious metals. They could create a thin layer of gold or silver on copper or bronze objects, giving them the appearance of solid precious metal, while conserving valuable resources. Metalworking was a specialized craft controlled by the state. Metalworkers held privileged positions in society and were often exempt from agricultural labor. They worked in state-sponsored workshops, producing objects for the nobility and religious institutions. The Spanish conquest had a devastating impact on Inca metalworking. Most gold and silver objects were melted down and shipped to Spain, and many metalworkers were forced to work in Spanish mines. However, some traditional techniques survived, particularly in the production of silver jewelry and religious objects. Inca metalworking reflects their technological sophistication and aesthetic sensibilities. While they may not have used metals for the same purposes as European civilizations, they created objects of remarkable beauty and craftsmanship that continue to inspire admiration. In our next segment, we'll explore the Inca economy and their unique approach to resource management. The Inca economy operated on principles radically different from modern market systems. There was no money, no markets, and no concept of private property as we understand it. Instead, the economy was based on reciprocity, redistribution, and state control. At the heart of the Inca economy was the ilu system, where communities worked collectively to produce food and goods. Each ilu had rights to specific lands and resources, and members contributed labor according to their ability. The state controlled the economy through a system of taxation based on labor rather than money. This was known as the meta system, where citizens were required to work for the state for a certain number of days each year. This labor was used for agricultural production, construction projects, military service, and textile production. Goods produced through the meta system were stored in state warehouses called kolkas. These storehouses were strategically located throughout the empire and held food, textiles, weapons, and other supplies. The state redistributed these goods as needed, particularly during times of scarcity or to support military campaigns. Trade between regions was limited and controlled by the state. Rather than markets, the Incas used a system of state-sponsored exchange, where goods were moved between different ecological zones to ensure access to diverse resources. This vertical complementarity allowed the empire to be self-sufficient. The Sapa Inca, as the divine ruler, theoretically owned all land and resources. He granted rights to use land to Alisan individuals in exchange for their labor and loyalty. This system ensured that basic needs were met while maintaining the emperor's authority. Despite the lack of markets, the Inca economy was remarkably efficient and productive. The state could mobilize vast resources for monumental projects like road construction, temple building, and agricultural development. The redistribution system provided a safety net for the most vulnerable members of society. This economic system reflected Inca values of collective welfare, reciprocity, and state control. It allowed the empire to thrive in a challenging environment and support a large population without the use of money or markets. In our next segment, we'll explore the meta labor tax system in more detail. The meta system was the cornerstone of the Inca economy and administration. This labor tax required all able-bodied men to work for the state for a certain portion of each year, typically about 2 to 3 months. Meta labor was used for a wide range of state projects: agricultural work on state farms, construction of roads and buildings, military service, mining, and textile production. The type of work assigned depended on an individual's skills and the needs of the empire. The meta was organized through the Alu system. Each Alu was responsible for providing a certain number of workers based on its population. These workers were organized into groups of 10, 50, 100, and so on, with each group having its own supervisor. Workers were not paid wages for their meta labor, but the state provided food, housing, and tools during their service. This system ensured that citizens could fulfill their obligations without suffering personal hardship. The meta system allowed the Inca state to mobilize vast amounts of labor for monumental projects. The construction of the road network, the terraced fields, and the impressive stone architecture were all made possible through the coordinated efforts of meta workers. While the meta was primarily a labor tax, it also served social and political functions. It created a sense of shared purpose and identity among diverse peoples, and it allowed the state to monitor and control the population. The Spanish conquistadors recognized the efficiency of the meta system and adapted it for their own purposes. However, they abused the system, forcing indigenous people to work in mines and other dangerous conditions for far longer periods than under Inca rule. Despite its potential for exploitation, the meta system was remarkably effective in the context of Inca society. It reflected the values of collective responsibility and reciprocity, and it allowed the empire to achieve remarkable feats of engineering and organization. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca warfare and military expansion. The Inca Empire grew from a small kingdom in the Cusco Valley to the largest empire in the Americas through military conquest and strategic diplomacy. Their military was highly organized and effective, allowing them to subdue and incorporate diverse peoples across a vast territory. Inca armies were composed primarily of farmers who were called to military service as part of their meta obligations. These soldiers were equipped with weapons made of bronze, stone, and wood, including slings, clubs, spears, and bolas. They wore quilted cotton armor for protection. Military campaigns were carefully planned and executed. The Incas typically attacked during the harvest season when enemy armies would be dispersed and vulnerable. They employed psychological warfare, displaying their military might to intimidate opponents into submission without battle. The Incas used a strategy of divide and conquer, allying with disaffected groups within enemy territories. They also employed diplomacy, offering favorable terms to peoples who submitted voluntarily, including access to Inca goods and protection from enemies. Conquered peoples were incorporated into the empire through a process of Incazation. They were taught Quechua, the Inca language, and Inca religious practices. Their leaders were often taken to Cusco to be educated in Inca customs and then returned to rule as Inca representatives. The Incas also practiced forced resettlement, moving entire communities to different parts of the empire. This policy served multiple purposes: breaking up rebellious groups, placing loyal populations in strategic areas, and ensuring access to diverse ecological zones. Despite their military success, the Inca Empire was not without challenges. Rebellions were common, particularly in regions far from Cusco. The empire was also weakened by a civil war between two brothers, Huascar and Atahualpa, just before the Spanish arrival. The Spanish conquest, beginning in the 1530s, took advantage of these divisions, with superior weapons, horses, and diseases to which the indigenous population had no immunity. a small force of conquistadors was able to defeat the mighty Inca Empire. Inca warfare reflected their values of order, hierarchy, and state control. Their military organization allowed them to build and maintain a vast empire, but it also created resentments that contributed to their eventual downfall. Where in our next segment, we'll explore the Spanish conquest and its impact on the Inca Empire. The arrival of the Spanish in the early 16th century marked the beginning of the end for the Inca Empire. This clash of worlds would forever change the course of Andean history and lead to the destruction of one of the America's greatest civilizations. The Spanish conquest was facilitated by several factors. The empire was weakened by a devastating civil war between Huascar and Atahualpa, two brothers vying for the throne after the death of their father Huayna Capac. This division created internal conflicts that the Spanish exploited. Diseases brought by Europeans, particularly smallpox, ravaged the indigenous population. Having no immunity, millions died, including the Emperor Huayna Capac and his designated heir, creating the succession crisis that led to the Civil War. The Spanish, led by Francisco Pizarro, arrived in 1532 with a small force of about 168 men. Despite their numerical disadvantage, they possessed superior weapons, steel swords, armor, and firearms. Horses which the Incas had never seen, and a ruthless determination to conquer and convert. The pivotal moment came at Cajamarca, where Pizarro captured Atahualpa, the victorious ruler in the Civil War. Despite paying a massive ransom in gold and silver, Atahualpa was executed by the Spanish, who then installed a puppet ruler, Manco Inca. While consolidating their control, Manco Inca initially cooperated with the Spanish, but later rebelled, establishing an independent Inca state in Vilcabamba. This neo-Inca state resisted Spanish rule for nearly 40 years before the last Inca emperor, Tupac Amaru, was captured and executed in 1572. The Spanish conquest brought profound changes to Andean society. The indigenous population was subjected to forced labor in mines and on plantations. Their religious practices were suppressed, and their lands were taken by Spanish colonizers. Despite these devastating changes, Inca culture did not disappear entirely. Many traditions continued in secret, blending with Spanish influences to create a unique syncretic culture that persists in the Andes today. The Spanish conquest represents one of history's most tragic encounters between civilizations, marking the end of the Inca Empire but not the end of Inca identity and resilience. In our next segment, we'll explore Machu Picchu, the most famous Inca site. Perched high in the Andes Mountains, Machu Picchu stands as the most iconic symbol of Inca civilization. This breathtaking site, with its precisely cut stone structures and dramatic mountain setting, continues to inspire wonder and admiration. Machu Picchu was built around 1450, likely as a royal estate for Emperor Pachacati. Its location was carefully chosen for both strategic and symbolic reasons, surrounded by sacred peaks and aligned with astronomical events. The site is divided into two main sections: the agricultural zone, featuring terraced fields that could grow crops at different altitudes, and the urban zone with temples, palaces, and plazas. The most famous structures include the Temple of the Sun, the Intihuatana stone, an astronomical clock or calendar, and the Room of the Three Windows. Machu Picchu demonstrates the Incas' mastery of stone masonry. The buildings are constructed with precisely cut stones that fit together without mortar, yet so tightly that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. This technique made the structures resistant to earthquakes, which are common in the region. The site also features an sophisticated water management system with channels and fountains that brought fresh spring water to the city. The Incas built terraces to prevent erosion and create microclimates for agriculture. Machu Picchu was abandoned less than 100 years after its construction, likely due to the Spanish conquest. 8. Its remote location protected it from the Spanish, and it remained largely unknown to the outside world until 1911, when American historian Hiram Bingham brought it to international attention. The purpose of Machu Picchu remains debated among scholars. While it was clearly a royal estate, it may have also served as a religious sanctuary, an astronomical observatory, or a center for coca leaf production. Today, Machu Picchu is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the new 7 wonders of the world. It attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, who come to marvel at its beauty and ponder its mysteries. Machu Picchu represents the pinnacle of Inca architectural achievement and continues to captivate the imagination of people around the world. It stands as a testament to the ingenuity and vision of the Inca civilization. Where in our next segment, we'll explore Inca astronomy and calendrical systems. The Incas were keen observers of the heavens, developing sophisticated astronomical knowledge that guided their religious practices, agricultural activities, and political organization. Without written records, they used the landscape itself as a celestial observatory. Inca astronomy was closely tied to their religion and cosmology. They saw the Milky Way as a celestial river, with dark constellations formed by dust clouds rather than stars. These dark constellations included animals like the llama, fox, and serpent, which played important roles in Inca mythology. The Incas built observatories and aligned their buildings with astronomical events. The Temple of the Sun in Cusco was designed so that sunlight would enter through a specific window and illuminate a particular point on the winter solstice. Similar alignments can be found at Machu Picchu and other sites. The Incas used a combination of solar and lunar calendars to track time. The solar calendar, with 365 days, was used for agricultural activities and religious festivals. It was divided into 12 months of approximately 30 days each, with the remaining days used for purification rituals. The lunar calendar, with 354 days, was used for religious ceremonies and determining the timing of certain festivals. The Incas adjusted for the difference between the solar and lunar years through intercalary periods. Astronomical observations also guided political decisions. The Sapa Incas' legitimacy was tied to celestial events, and eclipses were seen as omens requiring ritual responses. The movement of the Pleiades star cluster was used to predict rainfall and determine planting times. The Incas used various instruments for astronomical observation, including standing stones, pillars, and windows in temples. The Intihuatana stone at Machu Picchu may have functioned as an astronomical clock or calendar. The Spanish conquest disrupted Inca astronomical practices, as indigenous knowledge was suppressed and replaced with European systems. However, some traditional observations continued in secret, particularly those related to agriculture. Inca astronomy reflects their deep connection to the natural world and their ability to observe and interpret celestial patterns. It demonstrates how they integrated scientific knowledge with religious belief and practical necessity. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca medicine and healing practices. Inca medicine was a sophisticated blend of empirical knowledge, spiritual beliefs, and natural remedies. Healers, known as pacos or curanderos, combined physical treatments with spiritual rituals to address illness and maintain health. The Incas understood that disease could have both natural and supernatural causes. Natural illnesses were treated with herbal remedies, dietary changes, and practical interventions. Supernatural illnesses, believed to be caused by spirits or witchcraft, required spiritual healing and rituals. Herbal medicine was highly developed, with the Incas using hundreds of plants for medicinal purposes. Quinine from the cinchona tree was used to treat fevers and malaria. Coca leaves were chewed to alleviate hunger, fatigue, and altitude sickness. Other plants were used as painkillers, antiseptics, and digestive aids. Surgical techniques included trepanation, the drilling of holes in the skull to treat head injuries or neurological conditions. Remarkably, many patients survived these procedures, as evidenced by healed bone and archaeological remains. Healing rituals often involved offerings to Pachamama, Earth Mother, or mountain spirits Apis. These might include coca leaves, chichame's beer, or small figurines. Healers might also use divination to diagnose illnesses and determine appropriate treatments. The Inca state provided healthcare through the empire. Medical specialists were trained and supported by the state, and hospitals were established in major cities. These facilities cared for soldiers, workers, and the general population. Hygiene was important in Inca society. Public baths were built in many cities, and cleanliness was associated with health and spiritual purity. The Incas also understood the importance of clean water and built sophisticated water management systems. The Spanish conquest disrupted traditional medical practices. As indigenous knowledge was suppressed and European medicine was introduced, however, many traditional remedies and healing techniques continued to be used in secret, particularly in rural areas. Inca medicine reflects their holistic approach to health, integrating physical, spiritual, and environmental factors. It demonstrates their empirical knowledge of the natural world and their ability to develop effective treatments using available resources. In our next segment, we'll explore Inca music, dance, and entertainment. Music and dance were integral to Inca society, playing important roles in religious ceremonies, community celebrations, and everyday life. These art forms served as means of communication, cultural expression, and social cohesion. Inca music was primarily instrumental, featuring a variety of wind and percussion instruments. The quena, a flute made from bamboo or bone, was particularly popular. Other instruments included the antera panpipes, the tinya hand drum, and the charango, a small stringed instrument. Music was closely tied to religious practices. Specific melodies and rhythms were associated with different deities and ceremonies. The Incas believed that music could communicate with the spirit world and influence natural forces. Dance was equally important, with specific dances for different occasions. Agricultural dances mimicked planting and harvesting, while war dances celebrated military victories. Dances often told stories or represented natural phenomena like rainfall or animal movements. Both music and dance were taught from a young age, with children learning traditional songs and movements as part of their education. These art forms helped transmit cultural values and historical knowledge across generations. The Incas also enjoyed games and sports. One popular game was Tlachtli, a ball game played on a specially designed court. This game had religious significance and was sometimes used to resolve disputes or make important decisions. Storytelling was another important form of entertainment. Professional storytellers, known as herevicus, would recount myths, legends, and historical events. These stories preserved cultural memory and taught moral lessons. The Sapa, Inca, and nobility enjoyed more elaborate forms of entertainment, including theatrical performances and feasts. These events showcased the wealth and power of the elite, while reinforcing social hierarchies. The Spanish conquest had a profound impact on Inca music and dance. Many indigenous instruments and traditions were suppressed, while others blended with European influences to create new forms of expression. Despite these changes, traditional Andean music and dance have survived and evolved, continuing to play important roles in cultural identity and community life. Today, these art forms are celebrated throughout the Andes and beyond, connecting modern people to their Inca heritage. In our next segment, we'll explore the legacy of the Inca Empire in modern Andean culture. The Inca Empire may have fallen centuries ago, but its legacy continues to shape modern Andean culture in profound and enduring ways. From language and agriculture to architecture and spirituality, Inca traditions remain alive and relevant in the contemporary world. Quechua, the language of the Incas, is still spoken by millions of people throughout the Andes. In Peru and Bolivia, it holds official status alongside Spanish, and efforts are underway to preserve and revitalize the language through education and media. Inca agricultural techniques continue to be practiced by Andean farmers. Terraced fields, irrigation systems, and crop rotation methods developed by the Incas are still used to grow traditional crops like potatoes, quinoa, and maize. These sustainable practices are increasingly recognized as models for modern agriculture. Inca architecture and engineering continue to inspire admiration. The precise stone masonry of sites, like Andean Tatambo, remains unmatched, and modern architects study Inca techniques for earthquake-resistant construction. Inca spiritual beliefs persist in syncretic forms. Many Andean people blend Catholicism with traditional practices, honoring both Christian saints and mountain spirits. Rituals honoring Pachamama, Earth Mother, are still performed, particularly during agricultural cycles. The Inca concept of Ani, or reciprocal exchange, continues to guide social interactions in Andean communities. This principle of mutual support and cooperation remains central to communal life, particularly in rural areas. Inca textiles are still produced using traditional techniques, with patterns and designs that carry cultural significance. These textiles are valued both for their beauty and as expressions of cultural identity. The legacy of the Inca Empire is also celebrated through festivals, music, and dance. Events like Inti Raymi attract thousands of participants and spectators, reinforcing cultural pride and continuity. Modern indigenous movements often draw inspiration from Inca history and values, advocating for land rights, cultural preservation, and political autonomy. The Inca Empire serves as a symbol of indigenous achievement and resistance. The global fascination with Inca civilization, particularly sites like Machu Picchu, has made it one of the most recognized ancient cultures in the world. This interest supports tourism and economic development in the Andes, while raising awareness about indigenous heritage. The enduring legacy of the Inca Empire demonstrates the resilience and adaptability of Andean cultures. Despite centuries of colonization and change, Inca traditions continue to evolve and thrive, connecting past and present in a living cultural heritage. In our next segment, we'll explore some of the mysteries that still surround Inca civilization. Despite extensive research, many aspects of Inca civilization remain shrouded in mystery, inviting us to wonder and imagine. The Incas left no written records. So much of what we know comes from Spanish accounts and archaeological evidence, which can be incomplete or biased. One of the greatest mysteries is how the Incas transported and shaped the massive stones used in their construction. At near Cusco, some stones weigh over 100 tons and were quarried several kilometers away. How did they move these stones without wheels or draft animals strong enough for such tasks? Another mystery is the purpose of certain structures, like the carved rock formations at Ollantaytambo or the intricate channels at... Were these purely functional, or did they have deeper symbolic meanings? The Inca quipu, the knotted string recording system, remains only partially understood. While we know they recorded numerical data, it's believed they may have also recorded narratives and histories, but this knowledge has been lost. The rapid collapse of the Inca Empire after the Spanish arrival also raises questions. How did a small group of conquistadors defeat an empire of millions? The role of disease, civil war, and superior weaponry is clear, but the full story is more complex. Modern archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new aspects of Inca life. Recent LiDAR mapping has uncovered previously unknown settlements and road networks, expanding our understanding of their territorial organization. The purpose of Machu Picchu continues to be debated. While it was likely a royal estate, its exact function and the reasons for its abandonment remain subjects of scholarly discussion. These mysteries remind us that history is not static, but continually evolving. As new evidence emerges, they invite us to approach the past with humility and curiosity, recognizing that there is always more to learn. The enduring mysteries of Inca civilization add to its fascination, reminding us that, even in our information age, the past can still hold secrets and surprises. In our final segment, we'll reflect on the enduring legacy of the Inca Empire. As our journey through history gently comes to a close, I want to thank you for allowing me to be your guide tonight. The echoes of the past have a unique way of quieting our present thoughts, don't they? If you found comfort in this historical journey, consider subscribing to History Boring Sleep. By joining our community, you'll unlock a treasure trove of stories designed to accompany you into peaceful rest night after night. Your support helps us continue researching and creating these immersive experiences. While you drift towards sleep, know that thousands of others are finding tranquility in the same stories, connected through time. May your dreams be as rich as the history we've explored together. Until our next journey through time, I'm Mike, wishing you deep rest and peaceful dreams. Good night.